Imagine you wake up tomorrow with a very pleasant problem. Your budget is ready, your home charger is installed, and you have to pick one car to live with for the next 10 years. On one side is the most powerful Porsche ever built, the brand new Cayenne Electric. On the other is Audi's clean-sheet electric SUV, the Q6 e-tron, the first child of their brand new electric platform. Both are from the same Volkswagen Group family. Both sit on the same basic premium platform electric architecture, and yet they couldn't feel more different in character. Today on Autopedia, we're going deep, engineering deep, to figure out which one deserves that very expensive spot in your garage. So let's start under the skin, because that's where the real story is. Both of these SUVs are built on the Premium Platform Electric, or PPE, an 800-volt dedicated EV architecture developed jointly by Audi and Porsche. Audi actually launched PPE in series production with the Q6 e-tron, and Porsche then evolved the same architecture for the Cayenne Electric. The shared DNA matters because it means both cars start with a flat battery pack between the axles, long wheelbases, very short overhangs, and huge freedom in suspension and cabin packaging. Where they immediately diverge is how aggressive each brand has been with that hardware. The Cayenne Electric uses a newly developed high-voltage battery with around 113 kilowatt-hours of gross energy content structurally integrated into the body. Porsche literally uses the pack as part of the chassis, which increases body rigidity and lowers the center of gravity. That's classic Porsche thinking. The battery isn't just an energy tank, it's a structural component that directly affects handling precision. Audi, on the other hand, gives the Q6 e-tron up to roughly 100 kilowatt-hours of gross capacity and 94.9 kilowatt-hours net in the high-range variants. That's a little smaller, but still very healthy for a mid-size premium SUV, and it's tuned more for efficiency and range than for all-out track work. Now, when we talk about raw power, the Cayenne Electric absolutely refuses to play nice. In its turbo-electric form, we're looking at up to 850 kilowatts in launch control overboost, that's 1,156 metric horsepower, and up to 1,500 newton-meters of torque, officially making it the most powerful production Porsche ever built. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour takes just 2.5 seconds, and it keeps pulling to 260 kilometers per hour. Even the regular Cayenne Electric is hardly weak. Porsche quotes 325 kilowatts, 442 PS in overboost, and 0-100 in 4.8 seconds with launch control, with a top speed of 230 kilometers per hour. Audi chooses a more balanced lineup. For the Q6 SUV e-tron Quattro, the dual-motor all-wheel drive model delivers 388 PS, or 285 kilowatts, with 275 nm from the front motor and 580 nm from the rear, for a 0-100 km/h time of about 5.9 seconds in the stronger configurations. There are also rear-drive versions and a performance tune, but the heart of the range is that roughly 300 kilowatt all-wheel drive family car. Audi's philosophy here is fast enough for daily life, but always calm and efficient. Porsche's philosophy is, we're building an electric super SUV that just happens to have 5 seats. Yet, despite the different power levels, both SUVs share a very similar electrical backbone. They use an 800-volt system voltage, which dramatically reduces current for a given power level and allows thinner cables, lower resistive losses, and, crucially, very high DC charging power. Porsche leans hard into that. The Cayenne Electric can charge with up to 390 kilowatts of DC power, and under specific conditions, even up to 400 kilowatts. In ideal lab conditions, the state of charge can jump from 10 to 80% in under 16 minutes. And Porsche says you can add around 325 kilometers of WLTP range in just 10 minutes at a suitable high-power charger. Audi's numbers are slightly lower, but still very impressive for the class. The Q6 SUV e-tron Quattro supports up to 270 kilowatts of DC fast charging, giving a 10 to 80% session in about 21 to 27 minutes depending on variant and conditions, and Audi quotes up to around 255 kilometers of range added in 10 minutes at a high-power charging station. AC charging is 11 kilowatts on both cars, so overnight charging on a typical wall box is no drama for either. Range is where things get surprisingly close, even though the Porsche is so much more powerful. Thanks to that big 113 kilowatt-hour pack and very aggressive thermal management, Porsche claims up to about 641 to 642 kilometers of combined WLTP range for the Cayenne Electric in Europe, with the turbo model slightly lower but still over 620 kilometers depending on specification. Audi, with its slightly smaller net capacity, quotes maximum WLTP ranges in the region of 625 to 641 kilometers for the most efficient Q6 e-tron versions depending on motor configuration, tires, and market test method. And in the UK, that translates into up to 381 miles for the high-range Quattro model. So yes, in the real world, these two SUVs will probably be surprisingly similar when you're just cruising on the motorway. The Porsche simply has a much larger performance envelope above that. But to understand how they'll feel on a twisty road, we have to talk about drivetrains and chassis. Porsche's technical focus with the Cayenne Electric is continuous high output and repeatability. The rear motor uses direct oil cooling of the stator windings, letting it deliver high power for long periods without derating, and the high-voltage battery uses double-sided cooling plates to keep cell temperatures even. That is motorsport thinking, pulled straight from their Formula E development program. On top of that, the Cayenne Electric gets adaptive air suspension with Porsche Active Suspension Management as standard, with multiple ride height levels, off-road modes, and depending on spec, rear axle steering and active roll stabilization. You can raise it for a weighting depth of around 500 millimeters and significantly steeper approach angles if you tick the off-road package, or slam it down in Sport Plus to reduce drag and roll on the Autobahn. Audi also brings serious hardware to the table, but points it in a slightly different direction. The Q6 e-tron uses multi-link suspension front and rear and can be equipped with adaptive air suspension on higher trims, with Audi Drive Select giving you modes like Comfort, Dynamic, Off-Road, and an EV-specific efficiency program. Unlike the Cayenne Turbo Electric, which is unapologetically tuned for explosive acceleration and sporty responses, the Q6 wants to feel composed, quiet, and unflappable first, with performance arriving in a smoother, more progressive way. Steering, damping, and throttle mapping are all tied to those drive modes, but Audi's calibration tends to prioritize stability and predictability over ultra-sharp rotation. Platform-wise, both benefit hugely from PPE's long wheelbase and flat floor. Audi's designers talk about the Q6 e-tron interior being shaped from the inside out, taking advantage of the packaging freedom of the new platform and the new E3 electronics architecture. That means a very open cabin, loads of legroom, and what Audi calls the digital stage, a curved display set made up of the central MMI touchscreen and the virtual cockpit, with a separate passenger screen available, plus an interaction light strip running across the fascia. The idea is to create a cockpit that feels like a lounge with a tech wall, rather than a traditional driver-only instrument panel. Porsche answers with its own digital layer, but with a very different vibe. In the Cayenne Electric, you get the new Flow display, the largest continuous display surface ever fitted to a Porsche, seamlessly integrated into the dash, with the central touchscreen, driver's instrument cluster, and an optional passenger display behind a single glass panel. Porsche Digital Interaction then ties that into advanced voice control and a reworked user interface. The theme is less living room on wheels and more clean, driver-centric cockpit that just happens to have an insane amount of computing power behind it. Even the way Porsche organizes drive modes, through a familiar mode switch on the steering wheel, echoes their sports cars. Let's talk efficiency tricks, because that is where the engineering gets properly nerdy. Both cars use advanced recuperation, energy recovery when you lift off the accelerator or press the brake. But Porsche has been very explicit about optimizing recuperation to the point where the Cayenne Electric can match the recuperation performance of a Formula E car in certain scenarios. That's a big claim, and it speaks to how hard Porsche is leaning on brake-by-wire and predictive energy management. The system constantly decides whether to use the electric motors, the friction brakes, or a blend to achieve the deceleration you request while sending as much energy as possible back into that 113 kilowatt-hour pack. Audi's approach in the Q6 e-tron is more quietly efficient. Official consumption figures for the higher range models sit in the high teens of kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers on the WLTP cycle, roughly between 17 and 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers depending on variant. Combined with the 94.9 kilowatt hour net pack, that's how Audi gets its headline 600-plus kilometer ranges without going to Porsche's extreme power levels. Audi also makes smart use of thermal management, preconditioning the battery for fast charging and using predictive route data to decide when to coast and when to recuperate most aggressively. But they talk about it far less dramatically in their official material than Porsche does. Charging at home is another interesting philosophical split. Both cars support conventional AC wallbox charging at 11 kilowatts, so from empty to full overnight is straightforward. But Porsche goes further with something genuinely unique at launch: optional inductive charging. The Cayenne Electric will be the first production Porsche to support wireless charging up to 11 kilowatts. You park the car above a floor plate, and the system automatically starts charging with no cable connection at all. That is classic Porsche, tech as convenience. Expensive, a bit over the top, but the sort of thing that makes every arrival feel special. Audi sticks with conventional cable-based charging on the Q6, but bundles multiple cables and highlights partnerships, for example with home charger providers, rather than reinventing the physical charging interface. Before we move to which one you should pick, let's step inside each cabin from a human perspective. In the Audi Q6 e-tron, designers emphasize what they call a human-centric interior. The dash flows around the occupants. There's plenty of ambient lighting. The digital stage screens are oriented slightly towards the driver, and the center console floats to create open storage below. Materials focus on sustainability, as well as luxury, fabrics and recycled materials in non-critical touch zones, real metals, and high-quality soft touch where you actually interact. The vibe is Scandinavian tech apartment, calm, minimalist, quietly premium. In the Cayenne Electric, the cabin feels more like a Taycan that grew up and decided to become an SUV. The Flow display integrates the tech, but behind the wheel, you still get a proper Porsche driving position, a relatively low scuttle, and substantial bolstering in the seats. Porsche talks about increased comfort compared with previous Cayennes, but the design still says, this is a driver's car first, family hauler second. Even little details, like the mode switch on the steering wheel and the strong separation between driver and passenger zones, reinforce that story. So after all of that, how do you decide between them? Let's imagine 3 different buyers, and I'll place each car where it shines the most. If you're the kind of driver who wants the smoothest EV experience possible, who values calmness over cornering limits, and who sees your SUV as an extension of your living space, then the Audi Q6 e-tron quietly becomes the obvious choice. It's refined, it's efficient, and it's built around a brand new electronics architecture that will age extremely well. Its driving character is mature, predictable, and confidence-inspiring. It's the car that fades into the background when you're cruising, but steps forward with quiet strength when you need it. The Q6 e-tron is the sort of machine you buy when you want cutting-edge technology, but you want it to work effortlessly and invisibly. Now, if you're the second type of buyer, the one who wants your SUV to feel like a sports car wearing hiking boots, then the choice stops being a choice. Because Porsche built the Cayenne Electric as if their engineers were told, pretend physics is just a suggestion. You get a structural battery pack, motors that drink oil for cooling, an air suspension capable of going from off-road readiness to track mode rigidity, and an overboost mode that punches like a heavyweight champion. It is the definitive performance EV SUV, engineered with a level of obsession that borders on unnecessary. And yet, that's exactly why people buy Porsches. The Cayenne Electric doesn't just get you home, it delivers a show every time you touch the accelerator. The third buyer is the interesting one, the cross-shopper who wants both efficiency and emotion, long-range practicality and real driving feel, a family-ready interior with a sense of occasion. And here the comparison becomes philosophical. Do you want the brand that emphasizes refinement and digital comfort, or the brand that insists an SUV must still behave like a sports car? Both vehicles can road trip, both can charge at blistering speeds, both can deliver 600 plus kilometers of WLTP range in their ideal configurations. The difference is how they deliver that range and how they make you feel while doing it. Let's zoom in on a few more technical layers because this is Autopedia and we don't leave engineering on the table. First, braking and recuperation. Porsche's setup is unapologetically aggressive. In many situations, the Cayenne Electric can recuperate up to 400 kilowatts during deceleration. That is an absurd number, and it's made possible by a brake-by-wire system that instantly blends electric regeneration with mechanical braking. Porsche has stated in their official materials that recuperation capability is approaching Formula E territory in certain scenarios. For daily driving, this means you're effectively harvesting enormous amounts of energy every time you lift off the throttle. It also means the brake pedal has been tuned extremely carefully to hide the handoff between motors and discs, because at such high recuperation power, any calibration mistakes become very noticeable. Porsche knows this, which is why they've prioritized pedal feel to mimic a combustion Cayenne as closely as possible. Audi takes a more conservative approach. The Q6 e-tron uses a highly optimized recuperation system, yes, but its priority is smoothness. Maximum recuperation sits well below the Porsche's extreme numbers, but the trade-off is consistency. Audi wants every driver, from EV beginners to veterans, to feel instantly comfortable. Their pedal calibration is progressive and predictable. The system is always trying to balance efficiency with ride quality. It's less dramatic, but very Audi, logical, polished, and unflustered. Second, let's talk about thermal management. This is one of the most important aspects of long-term EV performance, and it's where the shared PPE architecture provides huge advantages. Both vehicles use high-performance cooling circuits for the battery, both precondition automatically when you set a fast charger as your destination, and both use thermal models to decide how much power can be used or recovered in real time. But Porsche takes it further. For the Cayenne Electric, the battery uses double-sided cooling plates, which means heat is extracted from both sides of each cell module. This improves thermal uniformity, reduces hot spots, and delays derating when you push the car hard. Porsche's motors also have oil-cooled stator windings, a more advanced solution than conventional water cooling, and this is why the turbo electric can deliver ridiculous power repeatedly without feeling like it's running into thermal limits. Porsche pulled heavily from their Taycan and motorsport programs here. Audi, meanwhile, uses a highly efficient but more conventional cooling design. It's designed for real-world consistency rather than repeated high-load torture. The benefit is longevity, predictable charging speeds, and very stable energy consumption across climates. Audi's thermal brain is less aggressive but extremely clever, using predictive navigation data to reduce cooling load where possible. The Q6 isn't built to chase lap times, it's built to maintain its range target in a wide variety of conditions. Third, body and chassis engineering. The Cayenne Electric's battery is load-bearing, structurally integrated. That alone gives it a dynamic advantage. The chassis is inherently stiffer because the battery contributes to the vehicle's mechanical strength. Add rear-axle steering, active anti-roll bars, and Porsche's obsessive tuning philosophy, and you get an SUV that behaves more like a tall sports wagon than a traditional EV SUV. The moment you turn the wheel, you know where the engineering hours went. The Q6 e-tron, however, uses its long wheelbase for calmness. Audi mentions in their official materials that the cabin was designed from the inside out, and that philosophy extends to ride comfort. The chassis feels composed, measured, and unshaken by bumps. Where Porsche wants you to feel involved, Audi wants you to feel insulated. The PPE platform allows both personalities to coexist, which is precisely why these two siblings can feel so different despite sharing bones. Now let's revisit the cabins and technology, because this is where brand identity becomes unmistakable. In the Audi, the digital stage is your constant companion, a curved panoramic display for the driver and center stack, and an optional passenger screen seamlessly integrated to the right. The interaction light bar glows across the dash and doors, responding to drive modes, charging states, and assistance systems. Audi's new E3 software architecture ensures faster updates, more responsive apps, and a cleaner, more cohesive UI. The whole atmosphere is airy, calm, Scandinavian in its simplicity. You get soft seats, recycled materials, warm lighting, and thick sound insulation. It's an EV you could live with for 12 hours straight without fatigue. The Cayenne Electric interior is the opposite philosophy. Porsche's Flow display is one giant glass pane, but the way it's framed feels more cockpit-like. The driving position is sporty, the bolsters hug you, the switchgear has that reassuring Porsche mechanical weight, and the mode switch on the steering wheel instantly reminds you that no matter how heavy this car is, it wants to be driven hard. The passenger gets their own display too, but Porsche limits what can be shown there while driving to avoid distracting the driver, a very Porsche detail. Materials are upscale and athletic rather than lounge-like. Leather, aluminium, carbon, dark brushed finishes. It feels like a performance machine first, a luxury machine second. Let's take a moment to imagine a real-world scenario, a long road trip. In the Q6 e-tron, you set your destination. The navigation system preconditions the battery for the next charger, and the adaptive cruise quietly maintains a disciplined, efficient pace. The cabin stays hushed. The seats remain soft, even after hours. Audi's character shines here, calm, predictable, almost meditative. It's the sort of SUV that makes 600 kilometers feel smaller. In the Cayenne Electric, the same road trip feels different. You sit lower, you feel more connected to the road. When you accelerate onto a highway, the instant torque has a kind of theatrical punch that the Audi simply doesn't attempt. The air suspension lowers itself at speed, the drag coefficient improves, and everything becomes taut and confident. Even in normal mode, there's an underlying sense of readiness, like the car is always reminding you, I can go faster if you want. Porsche wants every drive to feel like you're part of the experience. So which one should you buy? If your taste leans towards serenity, tech-forward comfort, and maximum efficiency, the Audi Q6 e-tron is your ideal match. It's advanced without being overwhelming, powerful without being aggressive, and elegantly understated in a way that makes it easy to live with. But if your heart beats faster when you hear the word turbo, if you believe an SUV should still corner like it cares about apexes, and if you want an EV that proves performance doesn't have to come at the cost of usability, then the Porsche Cayenne Electric stands on its own. It's the louder, faster, more emotional choice, engineered with a level of ambition that borders on showmanship. In truth, these cars answer different interpretations of the same question. What should a next-generation electric SUV be? Audi says it should be calm, efficient, and intelligently digital. Porsche says it should be powerful, visceral, and uncompromisingly sharp. And that's where we'll leave it. Two vehicles, one platform, two philosophies, and one impossible choice that ultimately comes down to who you are as a driver. If you enjoyed this deep dive comparison and want more engineering-focused EV breakdowns, make sure you subscribe to Autopedia. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.